Using speakerphone is one of those technologies that makes perfect sense in private. You are cooking. You are folding laundry. You need both hands. You place the phone on the counter, turn on the speaker, and continue the conversation without holding a rectangle against your head for 40 minutes. Fine. The misdemeanor begins when the counter is no longer in your kitchen. It is in a grocery store, or an airport, or a waiting room, or a coffee shop, or the checkout line at a pharmacy, where one person is suddenly conducting an entire conversation through a 6-inch electronic loudspeaker, while everyone else quietly studies the floor. Speakerphone changes the nature of a phone call. A normal phone call involves two people. Speakerphone in public involves two people and everybody within approximately 30 feet. You have created an audience. Nobody applied for this position. The strange part is that the person using speakerphone often behaves as though the conversation is still private. They discuss work, family, appointments, money, someone named Denise, who apparently made a decision last Thursday that remains controversial. The rest of us now know more about Denise than Denise would probably prefer. And because the other person is coming through the speaker, you are not merely overhearing one side of a conversation. You have received the complete program. This is no longer eavesdropping. Eavesdropping requires effort. You are sitting peacefully in an airport gate, and suddenly a man 6 seats away has provided you with both participants, context, supporting characters, and a developing conflict about whether somebody remembered to bring the cooler. You did not seek this information. The information has found you. There is also something acoustically unusual about a speakerphone conversation. The person holding the phone seems to believe the microphone is located in another county. So they hold the device 6 inches from their face and speak louder. The person on the other end is also loud because they are coming through a tiny speaker designed to project sound outward. Now both participants are competing with the room. The caller raises their voice because the room is noisy. The speaker gets louder because the caller cannot hear it. Other people in the room begin speaking louder because the phone call is now louder. One person has introduced a small acoustic arms race into a Panera, and there is no graceful way for everyone else to respond. You cannot ask them to lower the volume without becoming involved in a conversation you were trying very hard not to join. You cannot move away if you are waiting in the same line. You cannot put your own headphones on if your name is about to be called. So you do what people do in shared public spaces, you pretend not to hear everything. This requires effort. The conversation may be 4 feet away. Someone may be saying, "No, the doctor said it was definitely infected." And you are expected to stare at a magazine with the focused neutrality of a person who has heard absolutely nothing. Public speakerphone etiquette depends on a remarkable social fiction. That sound becomes private if everyone nearby agrees not to react to it. The most complicated participant may actually be the person on the other end, because sometimes they do not know. They think they are having an ordinary phone call. They may reasonably assume their comments are entering one person's ear rather than being broadcast beside the frozen foods. This creates a privacy arrangement in which only one participant knows that the meeting has been open to the public. Imagine discovering later that your conversation about your manager, your medical appointment, or your sister's divorce was delivered to 12 strangers near the self-checkout. You would have questions. And yet the speakerphone user will sometimes respond to a sensitive detail by lowering their own voice. This is fascinating. They lean closer to the phone and whisper their response. The phone remains on speaker. The other person continues broadcasting at full volume. We have secured one half of the classified material. Speakerphone also creates one of the stranger physical postures in modern life. The phone is not held to the ear. It is held flat in front of the mouth, usually at chest height like a tiny electronic serving tray. The person walks through the store speaking directly toward it. Occasionally they move it closer to their mouth when they speak, then extend it away when the other person responds. They are manually operating a 2-person radio station. And because the phone is visibly several inches away from the user's face, everyone nearby can see that speakerphone was not an accident. This was selected. A choice was made. There are, of course, reasonable exceptions. Maybe someone's hands are occupied. Maybe they are using an accessibility feature. Maybe the call is urgent. Maybe the phone's earpiece is broken. Maybe they need another person physically present to hear something. Maybe it is a 10-second logistical exchange in a relatively empty space. Fine. The misdemeanor is not that speakerphone has ever been activated outside a private residence, The misdemeanor is the sustained public broadcast in a shared space where dozens of people are now being asked to participate in a conversation by pretending they are not participating in it. And duration matters. A quick, "I'm at the entrance," is nothing. 8 minutes about somebody's coworker is programming. At some point, the call has acquired a runtime. You have heard the setup. You understand the conflict. You have developed opinions. You may disagree with the caller's interpretation of what Denise said, but you cannot contribute. That is perhaps the strangest rule of all. If you are going to broadcast a conversation loudly enough for everyone to hear, you would think the audience would receive limited participation rights. We do not. If the person says, "I just don't know why he would do that," you are not allowed to turn around and say, "I think he's insecure." That would be insane, even though you have now been listening for 6 minutes. So, the speakerphone user has created an audience that is required to listen but forbidden to engage. This is less like a conversation and more like public radio with extremely strict caller restrictions. A reasonable policy would be simple. If you are in a shared indoor space and the call is going to last more than a brief logistical moment, use the phone normally. Use headphones. Step outside. Find a quieter corner. You do not need to whisper. You do not need to apologize for having a phone call. Just keep at least half of it private. Because that was one of the original advantages of the telephone. The person was somewhere else. We did not all have to meet them. The charge: conducting an extended speakerphone conversation in a shared public space and involuntarily enrolling everyone nearby as silent participants. The defense: I'm just talking on the phone. The verdict: technically true, acoustically communal. You are allowed to have the conversation. We simply did not realize we were all on the call.